You will not believe what happened when Matt broke down crying over baby Matilda, staring at Jasmine with a mix of fear and disbelief. He couldn't even say the words without choking. Is this baby mine or Dan's? And just like that, the entire room froze. The air got heavy, and you could feel the tension through the screen. Everyone watching had the same thought. How do you even begin to navigate a relationship when that question is hanging over you? Matt's tears weren't just about a baby. They revealed a deeper fracture, a kind of doubt that goes beyond ordinary jealousy. What kind of trust survives this kind of doubt? He looked at Jasmine like he didn't know her at all, like the woman he married could be someone entirely different depending on whose Dina was in that little body. And Jasmine, caught off guard, had no easy answer, only her own fear, frustration, and confusion. This wasn't happening in isolation. Gino's shadow was there too, the lingering presence of a past that neither Matt nor Jasmine could ignore. And Matt's mom? She wasn't just a bystander. Her constant pressure, her insistence that marriage was the only right path, added another layer of tension that made every glance, every word, and every decision feel like walking on a tightrope over an emotional pit. And the worst part is, this moment was just the beginning. Secrets, past attachments, and conflicting loyalties were about to explode, and no one could predict who would come out unscathed. Before Matt's breakdown with baby Matilda, the tension had been simmering for weeks. Jasmine and Matt's marriage had never been simple. From the start, there were cracks, arguments about commitment, cultural expectations, and past baggage that refused to stay buried. Matt often seemed unsure, hovering between wanting to please his mom and wanting to follow his own heart. Jasmine, on the other hand, carried her own history. 2 failed marriages and years of heartbreak had left her cautious, skeptical, and unwilling to give her trust lightly. Then there was Gino. 5 years of history can't just disappear overnight. Even when he and Jasmine parted ways, the emotional residue remained. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was unfinished business, lingering loyalty, and unresolved feelings. And it wasn't subtle. Every glance, every casual conversation between them, even a shared laugh, seemed to fuel Matt's insecurities. He wasn't blind to it, and neither was Jasmine. But she wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She was trying to navigate the messy intersection of love, habit, and comfort. Adding fuel to the fire, there was the open marriage agreement, a concept that sounds simple on paper but was anything but. Matt and Jasmine had agreed to a structure that should have allowed them freedom and honesty, yet boundaries blurred constantly. Who was allowed to say what? Who was actually following the rules? Each perceived transgression became a test of loyalty, a flashpoint for jealousy, and another argument waiting to explode. And in reality, even the best intentions can unravel when emotions are raw and history is unresolved. Family pressure hovered over every choice like a storm cloud. Matt's mom had always been clear about what she wanted, Jasmine as her daughter-in-law, and a marriage that met her religious standards. She framed it as concern for Matt's salvation, but her influence wasn't subtle. Every decision he made was scrutinized, every hesitation labeled as indecision or weakness. Jasmine felt it too. It wasn't just Matt she had to convince, it was his mother, whose opinions carried a weight that could tip the balance of their future. And the emotional stakes were enormous. Trust had to be absolute, yet both partners had reasons to doubt. Jealousy wasn't just a fleeting emotion, it had become a constant undercurrent, quietly shaping every interaction. Loyalty was tested with every past connection, every lingering attachment to exes, and every decision about who they were allowed to be outside of the marriage. And somewhere in the middle of all this was Matilda, whose arrival only intensified the scrutiny and tension. The question of her paternity was more than a legal or biological issue. It became a symbol of trust, commitment, and clarity in a relationship that had neither. The tell-all episode was always going to be explosive, but the way it unfolded surpassed expectations. Ultimatums were delivered in sharp, biting tones. Matt warned Jasmine that he was putting a time limit on their marriage, a kind of expiration date, and Jasmine's reaction wasn't what he expected. It wasn't just anger. It was shock, hurt, and disbelief. She had been holding on to her own uncertainties, trying to protect herself from getting hurt, and suddenly she was being cornered. The confrontation was more than a heated conversation, it was a test of wills, a battle over emotional territory where neither side could afford to back down. And then there were the sodery, smaller confrontations that layered onto the drama. A simple disagreement over a past text message could spiral into hours of debate. A casual mention of Gino triggered defensive reactions from both Matt and Jasmine. Even jokes became loaded with meaning, each word a potential spark for conflict. Watching it unfold, you could see how fragile the dynamic was, how quickly emotions could escalate from irritation to tears to outright shouting. Through it all, the camera captured the nuances that casual viewers might miss. The way Matt flinched when Jasmine brought up his mother, the way Jasmine paused before answering questions about her feelings for Gino, the subtle shifts in body language that revealed frustration, fear, or longing. It was a study in emotional tension, and every viewer could feel it, even if they weren't physically present in the room. Underlying all this was a question that neither Matt nor Jasmine could fully answer. Could they trust each other again? Could loyalty survive when past attachments loomed so large? Could love endure under the pressure of ultimatums, family expectations, and public scrutiny? The tell-all wasn't just entertainment, it was a crucible, testing every assumption, every commitment, and every boundary they had tried to maintain. And then, the surprises started. A revelation here, a confession there, each moment layered with emotional impact. Fans who had been following the story knew some of the history, but the way it came together in the tell-all made even familiar information feel shocking. The pacing, the emotional volatility, and the constant questioning of motives kept viewers on edge. Nothing was predictable, and every interaction carried the potential to tip the balance of the relationships involved. What made it all so captivating was the human element. This wasn't scripted fiction. These were real people reacting to real emotions under intense pressure. Every hesitation, every tear, every raised voice revealed something true about the characters and the stakes involved. And yet, even in the chaos, there were moments of clarity. Moments when Matt's fear, Jasmine's caution, or Gino's lingering attachment exposed truths that were impossible to ignore. Wait until you see how a single conversation changes everything. Matt's world had been unraveling long before the tell-all cameras rolled in. Every decision, every word, every glance from Jasmine felt loaded with meaning. When he looked at her, he wasn't just seeing his wife. He was seeing a history he couldn't control, a past relationship that refused to stay buried, and the looming pressure of a family that demanded certainty. The question of Matilda's paternity wasn't simply about biology. It was about trust, control, and whether Matt could finally feel secure in the life he had chosen to share with Jasmine. He carried a heavy mix of fear and frustration. Fear that Jasmine had moved on in ways he couldn't comprehend, frustration that past attachments, particularly Gino, still seemed to occupy her mind. Every smile or laugh shared with Gino became a trigger, a reminder that the emotional landscape of their marriage was far from simple. Matt wasn't oblivious to this. He noticed patterns, he interpreted body language, he tried to predict motives. And with each observation, the anxiety grew. The uncertainty about the baby's paternity only amplified his insecurities, making him question not just Jasmine's actions, but his own judgment. Family influence played a role that Matt could hardly ignore. His mother's constant reminders about marriage and religious expectations hovered over every interaction. He felt torn between following his own instincts and obeying a moral and cultural compass that had been ingrained in him since childhood. The pressure to marry, to maintain appearances, and to fulfill what his mother deemed righteous made every choice heavier, every confrontation riskier. When he confronted Jasmine, it wasn't just a personal struggle, it was a collision of love, duty, and fear of societal judgment. Jealousy, though, was the fuel that lit the fire most brightly. Gino wasn't just an ex, he was a tangible reminder of what had once been, and the possibility that Jasmine's feelings hadn't entirely faded haunted Matt. He watched, questioned, and measured every interaction, trying to gauge what was harmless nostalgia and what could threaten the fragile trust in their marriage. Every conversation about Gino became a test of honesty and loyalty. Matt's mind spun in loops, weighing evidence, imagining worst-case scenarios, and bracing for emotional fallout. And then came the confrontations, moments where Matt couldn't hold the tension inside any longer. He had to ask the questions everyone feared, to demand clarity where there was only ambiguity. When he asked Jasmine about Matilda, his voice shook, not with anger, but with vulnerability. He wanted certainty, an answer that would allow him to breathe again. And yet, even as Jasmine responded, hesitation lingered in her tone, feeding the anxiety instead of quelling it. Social media reactions added another layer to the storm. Posts, comments, and fan theories piled on like a chorus of judgment and speculation. Every headline about the couple felt personal, as though the world itself was weighing in on their most intimate doubts. Some supported Matt, others questioned his behavior, but all of it kept him second-guessing his instincts. He tried to process it rationally, but emotions have a way of overtaking logic when stakes are this high. Patterns in Matt's behavior became clear to those watching closely. He oscillated between confrontation and withdrawal, between seeking reassurance and projecting suspicion. He demanded honesty, but struggled to handle answers that didn't align with his fears. He tried to assert control over the marriage, over conversations, over timing, yet every attempt seemed to create new friction instead of resolving the old. It wasn't cruelty or manipulation, it was the human response to confusion, betrayal, and unresolved history. And the baby's paternity lingered like a shadow over everything. Even small remarks or passing comments from Jasmine became loaded with potential meaning. Matt scrutinized every detail, trying to find proof or disproof of his fears. Every interaction, whether casual or confrontational, was filtered through this lens of doubt. Even those close to the couple noticed how taut the tension had become, how easily a minor slip could ignite a major argument. The tell-all amplified all of this. On camera, Matt's vulnerability became undeniable. He admitted fear, expressed jealousy, and even acknowledged uncertainty about his own actions. Moments that might have seemed small off-screen, hesitation, avoidance, a pointed glance, took on monumental weight under the lights. He had to confront Jasmine directly, not just for the cameras, but for his own need to know the truth. It was messy, raw, and emotionally exhausting. And yet, despite the chaos, Matt wasn't static. He shifted, he questioned. He tried to understand not only Jasmine, but himself. Each revelation from Jasmine, every nuance in her tone or expression, forced him to reassess. It was a constant back and forth, a negotiation with reality and perception. Even as arguments flared and doubts surged, he continued searching for clarity, for a path forward that might restore trust, or at least help him cope with the uncertainty. But what Matt does next might shock even the most loyal fans. Jasmine had been carrying her own set of burdens long before the tell-all cameras caught her every move. 2 failed marriages had left her wary of promises, skeptical of love, and protective of her heart. She wasn't reckless, and she wasn't naive. When Matt laid down an ultimatum, giving her what he called an expiration date, it wasn't just another argument. It was a trigger that activated years of caution and self-preservation. She had learned the hard way that saying yes too quickly or trusting too fully could leave her vulnerable in ways she couldn't afford. Her history with Gino complicated matters further. 5 years together wasn't just a memory, it was a chapter that still influenced her emotions and decisions. She wasn't hiding it, though she didn't want to hurt Matt. It was human to feel something for someone who had been a significant part of your life. Every time Gino was nearby, every time they exchanged a glance or a laugh, Matt's insecurities surged, and Jasmine felt caught in the middle. She wasn't looking for trouble, but old feelings are tricky, and navigating them while married to someone new required careful balance. Jasmine's independence was a defining feature of her personality, and she didn't let anyone forget it. Social media offered glimpses into her mindset, showing a woman who knew her worth and wasn't willing to compromise her sense of self. In one post, she openly acknowledged her imperfections, her past, and her skepticism toward men. She made it clear that her love for her children and her own stability came first, and that she wasn't willing to be manipulated by family pressure or societal expectation. These weren't empty words, they were a declaration of intent, a framework for the boundaries she was trying to maintain with Matt. Family interference added another layer of strain. Matt's mom's insistence on marriage framed Jasmine's every choice as a moral or religious test. She wasn't dismissive of family, but she resented feeling coerced, as though her worth or the legitimacy of her marriage depended on someone else's approval. It wasn't just Matt she had to consider, it was the expectations, the ultimatums, and the constant scrutiny from his family. It made every decision feel heavier, every conversation more fraught with tension. When Matt questioned her loyalty, when he doubted Matilda's paternity, Jasmine's patience was tested. She wanted clarity, not conflict, but even her calmest explanations were filtered through the lens of Matt's fears. She couldn't simply reassure him and move on. The past was still there, and Gino's presence reminded her of unfinished emotional business. Yet she managed her responses with careful precision, balancing honesty with discretion, revealing enough to be truthful without giving Matt or the cameras more ammunition than necessary. Her reactions during the tell-all highlighted this balance. She didn't lash out, but she didn't submit either. When faced with ultimatums, she articulated her hesitations, expressing that marriage wasn't something she would commit to lightly. It wasn't about rejecting Matt personally, it was about self-protection, about refusing to be rushed into a decision that might later lead to regret or heartbreak. Each answer was layered, strategic, and revealing, showing a woman who understood her own heart and wasn't willing to sacrifice it, even under pressure. Jasmine's social media posts reinforced her perspective. She made it public that her trust wasn't easily earned, that she prioritized stability for her children, and that she wouldn't compromise her autonomy for anyone. Fans who followed her online could see the alignment between what she said publicly and what she expressed privately on camera. She wasn't inconsistent. She was cautious, deliberate, and emotionally aware. Every post, every comment, every caption reflected a mindset shaped by past experiences and current realities. And then there was the subtle but undeniable connection with Gino. It wasn't overt or manipulative. It was history, comfort, and familiarity that lingered. Matt saw it and reacted with fear and jealousy. But Jasmine wasn't seeking conflict. She was navigating layers of emotion that even she didn't fully control. It made her responses more complex, more human, and more relatable to anyone who has ever wrestled with past attachments while trying to honor present commitments. During one pivotal conversation, Jasmine revealed something that could change Matt's next move entirely. She didn't say it lightly. The weight of her words carried the possibility of altering the dynamics of the marriage. It wasn't a confession meant to provoke, it was honesty layered with caution, a calculated disclosure that forced Matt to reconsider, reflect, and respond. For the viewers, it was a reminder that Jasmine's perspective was never simple, that her choices were deliberate, and that her emotions were as intricate as the situation demanded. If you think you've seen her true feelings, think again. Gino had been out of the main picture for a while, or at least that's what Matt hoped. But anyone following this story closely knew he wasn't completely gone. 5 years together leaves more than memories, it leaves patterns, habits, and emotional ties that don't simply vanish. Gino carried his own frustration, a mix of heartbreak from the past and anger at how things had ended with Jasmine. He wanted closure, yet part of him wasn't ready to walk away completely. That tension became a silent force, shaping interactions and stirring uncertainty for both Jasmine and Matt. Even when he tried to remain calm, Gino's presence acted like a catalyst. Jasmine had history with him, and that familiarity created comfort, and sometimes conflict. The way he listened, the way he reacted, the occasional laugh or glance, all carried weight far beyond what he might have intended. Matt could see it too, and every moment Gino was near seemed to amplify insecurities and doubts. It wasn't manipulation, it was the natural residue of a relationship that had meant a lot to both of them. Gino's emotional positioning was complex. He wanted to respect Jasmine's choices, to step back and allow her space with Matt. But there was a part of him that couldn't fully detach. Watching her navigate the ultimatums, the family pressure, and Matt's growing jealousy was frustrating. He wanted to protect her, to ensure she wasn't being coerced, but he had to balance that desire against the risk of making things worse. Each interaction required careful judgment, and every misstep could escalate tension in ways he couldn't fully control. The love triangle dynamic wasn't about assigning blame. Gino didn't intend to disrupt Jasmine and Matt's marriage, but his history and emotional weight made disruption almost unavoidable. In some ways, he acted as a mirror, reflecting the unresolved feelings and lingering attachments that neither Matt nor Jasmine could ignore. When he offered comfort or support, it wasn't about taking sides. It was about being present for someone he still cared about, even if that care complicated the present. Some moments made the tension almost unbearable. A brief conversation, a shared laugh, a comment about past memories could send Matt spiraling. He watched Gino's subtle reactions, wondering if they signaled lingering feelings, jealousy, or intent. For Jasmine, it was equally complicated. She wanted honesty and clarity, but she also couldn't erase years of shared history. And for Gino, each interaction became a delicate negotiation between past attachment, current reality, and the desire to move on while staying connected emotionally. Fans and social media viewers picked up on these subtleties. Posts and comments dissected every interaction between Gino and Jasmine, questioning his intentions, speculating on the strength of his feelings, and debating whether he would ultimately step aside. That external attention added another layer of pressure, making every word and gesture more significant. What might have been a private interaction became public fodder, feeding the drama and intensifying the stakes for everyone involved. Gino's influence was subtle but undeniable. He wasn't orchestrating chaos, yet chaos seemed to follow him by default. His presence reminded everyone that relationships aren't just about current choices. They're about histories, emotions, and unresolved connections. Even when Matt and Jasmine attempted to define boundaries, Gino's existence within that emotional web created ambiguity. No one could ignore it, and the tension only grew as cameras recorded every interaction. Moments of emotional vulnerability revealed Gino's true position. When he expressed frustration or heartbreak, it wasn't anger at Jasmine or Matt. It was a mix of longing, regret, and the struggle to reconcile past feelings with present realities. He wanted closure, but closure wasn't simple. Jasmine wasn't ready to fully cut ties, and Matt's jealousy kept things charged. Each conversation, each glance, each choice carried weight far beyond the immediate moment, building a suspense that kept everyone guessing about how the triangle might finally resolve. And yet, there were glimpses of hope that Gino could move on. He recognized boundaries, acknowledged Matt's role, and even tried to step back at times. But emotional ties are stubborn, and part of him remained tethered to Jasmine. That tension created a dramatic pull that the audience could feel, a sense that the triangle was far from settled. Every word he said, every step he took, carried the potential to tip the balance of trust and loyalty, making the situation feel volatile, unpredictable, and compelling. Just when you think Gino is out, he makes a move that shocks everyone. Matt's mother had been a silent force long before cameras captured her influence. Her presence wasn't just physical, it was woven into every expectation, every decision, every tension between Matt and Jasmine. She framed marriage as more than a personal milestone, it was a moral and religious imperative. In her eyes, delaying or questioning the union wasn't hesitation, it was defiance. Every conversation she initiated or mediated carried a subtle insistence. Matt's duty was clear, and Jasmine's role was to comply. For Matt, that created an almost impossible position. On one hand, he loved Jasmine, or at least he wanted to. On the other hand, he felt an ingrained responsibility to honor his mother's guidance. He wrestled with his own desires and the ingrained sense that disobedience could have moral consequences. It wasn't simply about pleasing his mom, it was about navigating a belief system that had defined his choices for years. Every word, every glance from her reminded him that marriage wasn't just a private decision. It was a statement of faith, family loyalty, and social expectation. Jasmine, however, approached the situation from a very different perspective. She wasn't naive about family pressure, but she refused to let it dictate her choices. Years of experience had taught her that personal agency mattered more than anyone else's opinion. Marriage wasn't a transaction or a box to check, it was a commitment that had to feel genuine and safe. Being pushed by Matt's mother only reinforced her caution. She wanted clarity, honesty, and alignment, not just compliance to external expectations. This contrast created friction at every turn. Matt, caught between his mother's moral framing and his own uncertainty, often projected his frustration onto Jasmine. He tried to reconcile his love with duty, but the competing pressures made every conversation tense. Jasmine, sensing both his love and his hesitation, held firm boundaries, unwilling to bend simply because of outside influence. The result was a dynamic charged with emotional volatility, trust strained, communication faltered, and every choice became a high-stakes negotiation. Family pressure affected more than just decisions, it shaped perceptions. Matt began questioning Jasmine's intentions, wondering if her hesitations were genuine or if they stemmed from reluctance to meet his mother's expectations. Jasmine, in turn, interpreted Matt's deference to his mother as a lack of independence or a compromise of their partnership. Each side filtered actions through layers of expectation, and small misunderstandings quickly escalated. The more Matt tried to please his mother, the more Jasmine felt her autonomy challenged, creating a feedback loop of tension and mistrust. Social expectations amplified the pressure. Beyond Matt's immediate family, there was a wider audience observing, judging, and speculating. The cultural lens of marriage, legitimacy, and morality magnified every decision, turning private doubts into public drama. For Jasmine, that meant her autonomy had to coexist with scrutiny. For Matt, it meant navigating his loyalty to his mother while defending the integrity of his marriage. Both struggled with the reality that their choices weren't just personal, they were visible, evaluated, and interpreted by many. The stakes escalated when ultimatums entered the conversation. Matt's expiration date for Jasmine wasn't simply a personal boundary, it was influenced by family pressure, societal judgment, and his own emotional exhaustion. Jasmine, aware of these layers, responded carefully, emphasizing honesty and emotional safety. Each exchange became a test of character, resilience, and strategy, highlighting how deeply family expectations can infiltrate romantic dynamics. Even mundane conversations carried weight. When Matt mentioned potential scenarios about the future, every hypothetical became entangled with judgment, belief, and history. Jasmine's careful responses underscored her insistence on personal agency, while Matt's reactions revealed the internal tug-of-war between duty and desire. Moments that might seem minor on the surface, like discussing living arrangements, parenting plans, or social obligations, were loaded with moral, emotional, and relational implications. The pressure also influenced the power dynamics between them. Jasmine's cautious stance forced Matt to confront his own priorities, while his mother's insistence amplified his insecurities and indecision. Neither could act in isolation. Every step forward required negotiating expectations, desires, and fears. The result was a relationship operating under constant tension, where emotional clarity was elusive and every decision risked further strain. And just when it seemed like the tension couldn't get higher, Matt faced a pivotal choice. Will he prioritize his mother's expectations over his own judgment, or will he assert independence in a way that could redefine the marriage? Each conversation, each decision, carried the potential to shift the balance, for better or worse. The next family conversation could decide their entire future. The tell-all stage was charged from the moment Matt, Jasmine, and Gino stepped under the bright lights. Tension hung thick, almost tangible, as cameras captured every glance, every pause, every word that could spark a reaction. The first confrontation was subtle but electric. Matt's expiration date ultimatum hung in the air like a storm cloud. Jasmine's face betrayed a mix of frustration and disbelief, the kind of look that only comes when someone's personal boundaries are challenged in front of an audience. The stakes weren't just emotional, they were public, with millions watching, waiting for the spark that would ignite chaos. Matt's fear of betrayal was palpable. He questioned Jasmine about her past with Gino, her interactions with other men, and even the possibility that baby Matilda wasn't his. The words weren't cruel, but they were loaded with suspicion, doubt, and insecurity. Jasmine, in response, didn't lash out, but she didn't fold either. She maintained a careful balance between honesty and defense, revealing just enough to assert her autonomy without giving away unnecessary ammunition. The dynamic was tense, almost like a chess match, where each move had immediate consequences. Flirtation added another layer of volatility. Gino, lingering on the sidelines, occasionally interjected with comforting words or casual comments that weren't overt but carried weight. Matt noticed it, and jealousy flared almost instantly. It wasn't manipulation, it was the residue of past intimacy and emotional attachment, but it complicated everything. Jasmine's responses were equally measured. She wasn't seeking to provoke, but history is powerful, and small gestures can trigger big reactions when old feelings are involved. The audience could feel the tension growing, every pause pregnant with unspoken thoughts. Accusations came fast and sharp. Matt confronted Jasmine about potential dishonesty, about whether she had been fully transparent and whether her choices were influenced by external pressures. Jasmine countered, pointing out inconsistencies in Matt's own behavior, highlighting the ways family interference and ultimatums had skewed their communication. It became clear that neither party was purely innocent. Both were navigating fear, loyalty, and unresolved history, trying to assert control in a situation that constantly threatened to slip away. Emotional breakdowns punctuated the episode. Tears flowed, voices shook, and frustration bubbled over, revealing the raw vulnerability beneath the public personas. Matt's fear of rejection, Jasmine's desire for autonomy, and Gino's lingering attachment converged in a series of moments that were as heartbreaking as they were dramatic. Every fan watching could relate in some way. The fear of being misunderstood, the tension between love and loyalty, the struggle to reconcile past mistakes with present realities. Behavior patterns became evident under the scrutiny of the tell-all stage. Matt's tendency to react impulsively, Jasmine's careful balancing of honesty and defense, and Gino's oscillation between detachment and involvement all highlighted underlying emotional scripts that had been building for years. It wasn't just drama for drama's sake, it was the result of repeated patterns colliding in high-stakes circumstances. Observing these behaviors offered insight into why the triangle had become so volatile and why trust had been eroded over time. Audience-inclusive commentary surfaced naturally as the conflicts escalated. Observers could question whether ultimatums were about asserting love or controlling fear, whether flirtation was innocent or a sign of unresolved attachment, and whether accusations reflected truth, insecurity, or projection. Each interaction revealed layers of human psychology, fear of loss, need for validation, and the struggle to balance past and present relationships. These weren't simple conflicts, they were emotionally complex, messy, and intensely real. And then came the unexpected revelation. A lie surfaced on camera, subtle yet consequential, about interactions that neither Matt nor Jasmine had anticipated being questioned. The disclosure didn't just shock the room, it reframed previous arguments, forcing both Matt and Jasmine to reconsider assumptions, past behaviors, and the reality of their situation. The audience felt the tension spike, knowing that what had seemed resolved was suddenly thrown into chaos again. This revelation set the stage for rapid-fire emotional shifts. Moments that had felt tense now became explosive. Matt's frustration surged, Jasmine's guardedness deepened, and Gino's presence, though restrained, reminded everyone that unresolved feelings were still very much alive. Every word spoken, every glance exchanged, carried potential consequences, and the cameras captured it all. Fans watching the episode on social media quickly dissected each interaction. Every comment, every clip, every reaction contributed to the ongoing conversation about loyalty, honesty, and the ripple effects of past choices. The drama wasn't contained within the studio, it spilled out into public perception, magnifying stakes and adding layers of interpretation that further complicated the triangle. The tell-all highlighted the consequences of past decisions in real time. Ultimatums, flirtations, accusations, and emotional breakdowns weren't isolated incidents. They were the product of accumulated history, unresolved attachments, and external pressures. The episode revealed just how fragile trust can be when layered with fear, jealousy, and expectation. Every reaction mattered, and every interaction carried the weight of prior misunderstandings. You will not believe who drops the next bomb. Social media lit up almost instantly after the tell-all aired. Clips of Matt questioning baby Matilda's paternity went viral within hours, sparking threads on Twitter, TikTok reactions, and endless debates on Instagram. Fans weren't just watching, they were dissecting every facial expression, every pause, every phrase. Some argued Matt was justified, claiming anyone in his position would feel doubt and fear. Others sided with Jasmine, insisting that ultimatums and family pressure had unfairly cornered her. The conversation quickly became a mix of empathy, outrage, and speculation, reflecting just how invested audiences were in the emotional stakes of this triangle. Memes captured the chaos perfectly. One showed Matt with wide eyes and tears streaming, captioned, "When you realize the baby might not be yours." Another depicted Gino lurking in the background, labeled, "The reminder you can't escape your past." Fans found humor in the absurdity while still acknowledging the raw tension on screen. Social media amplified drama that was already emotionally explosive, creating a feedback loop where public opinion influenced perception of the characters' motives and integrity. Viewer interpretations often clashed with the reality of what was happening on camera. While some fans criticized Jasmine for lingering feelings for Gino, others noted the pressures she faced from Matt's mother, social expectations, and past relationship trauma. Similarly, Matt's emotional reactions were polarizing. Some praised his honesty, others labeled him controlling. Observing these reactions offered insight into how context, personal bias, and narrative framing shape public perception. The same scene could be seen as either betrayal or self-protection, depending on which perspective a fan aligned with. Jasmine's social media posts added another layer. She shared reflections that resonated with her audience, emphasizing autonomy and caution in relationships. Fans quickly connected her statements to moments on the show, framing her behavior as intentional and self-aware rather than manipulative. Her transparency sparked conversations about emotional boundaries and self-preservation, creating a nuanced discussion that went beyond simple drama. The tell-all also triggered debates about trust and relationship patterns. Many fans questioned the dynamics of ultimatums and jealousy, asking whether these were signs of love, insecurity, or unhealthy pressure. Some noted the complications of Gino's lingering attachment, observing how his presence intensified conflicts. Others speculated about the long-term effects of family interference on romantic decisions, especially in culturally complex relationships. The audience became amateur psychologists, analyzing motives and projecting possible outcomes. Engagement was at an all-time high when it came to moral judgment. Comments ranged from "I would never put up with that" to "Matt's mother is creating more problems than she solves." Some fans empathized with the difficulty of balancing love, loyalty, and external expectations, while others focused on accountability and honesty. Every post, meme, and thread added to the collective interpretation of events, reinforcing how public scrutiny shapes the storytelling experience for reality TV. Even TikTok reactions showed layers of emotional investment. Clips with Jasmine laughing or smiling during tense moments sparked commentary about emotional resilience, while Matt's tearful confessions prompted debates about vulnerability versus manipulation. Each piece of content invited fans to consider their own reactions to similar relationship conflicts, making the story interactive beyond the screen. Fans often disagreed on what choices they would make in Jasmine or Matt's position. Some argued for setting firm boundaries and walking away. Others suggested compromise or patience, pointing out the complexities of love, history, and family influence. These discussions revealed the deep engagement of viewers who weren't merely consuming drama, they were reflecting on their own values and experiences through the lens of the tell-all. You could see the divide in commentary. Half empathized with Matt's emotional struggle, half applauded Jasmine's cautious independence, and nearly everyone acknowledged Gino's lingering presence as a complicating factor. The online community essentially acted as an extended narrator, offering interpretation, judgment, and emotional validation in real time. Fans are still debating this moment. What would you do? Watching the tell-all, it becomes impossible to ignore the repeating patterns that fuel the drama. Ultimatums, jealousy, and unclear boundaries weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a cycle that escalated tension over time. Matt's expiration date, for instance, wasn't just dramatic television. It was a reflection of a deeper fear of loss and betrayal. Ultimatums often arise when trust feels fragile, and in this case, the stakes were amplified by history, past heartbreaks, and lingering attachments. The moment Matt asked Jasmine to commit on his timeline revealed more about his own anxieties than it did about her intentions. Jealousy played a huge role in driving emotional responses. Matt's discomfort around Gino wasn't irrational, considering their shared past with Jasmine, but the way it manifested on camera showed how unresolved feelings can spiral into confrontations. Gino's presence highlighted the difficulty of letting go, especially when history is intertwined with current relationships. Jasmine, meanwhile, had to navigate these emotions while maintaining her own sense of autonomy, which created friction. Her caution wasn't coldness, it was self-protection in a situation where trust had already been challenged. The open marriage setup added another layer of complexity. Agreements about boundaries are only effective if all parties share the same understanding and commitment. In this case, confusion over expectations, past emotional baggage, and shifting loyalties created a perfect storm. The emotional fallout wasn't just about perceived betrayal, it was about misaligned assumptions and unmet needs. Watching these interactions, viewers can see how even well-intentioned arrangements can backfire when clarity and communication are missing. Behavior patterns on display also reveal a lot about human psychology under stress. Repeated confrontation, defensiveness, and testing of limits often mask vulnerability. Matt's insistence on answers about fidelity and paternity can be read as a desire for security, not cruelty. Jasmine's guarded honesty shows a protective strategy designed to maintain control over her life and choices. Gino's oscillation between detachment and involvement reflects the struggle to reconcile past attachments with present realities. These patterns are universal in high-stakes relationships, even if the circumstances are heightened for television. Empathetic insight emerges when we consider the emotional pressures each individual faced. Family influence, social expectations, and public scrutiny created layers of stress that intensified conflicts. Matt was balancing personal desire with his mother's expectations, Jasmine was navigating a conditional green card and personal history, and Gino was confronting unresolved emotions. The convergence of these pressures illustrates how external factors can magnify internal insecurities, leading to reactions that might otherwise seem extreme. There's a broader lesson here about trust and communication. The tell-all revealed that trust is fragile when assumptions replace dialogue and communication fails under pressure. Ultimatums and accusations rarely resolve underlying concerns, they often deepen distrust. Conversely, moments where characters spoke honestly, even when difficult, provided clarity and set the stage for potential resolution. Fans can take away the importance of transparent conversations and setting boundaries early, before misunderstandings multiply. Patterns of emotional escalation also provide insight into conflict resolution, or the lack thereof. Repetition of arguments, revisiting past grievances, and invoking outside influence, like family can trap people in a cycle of tension. Recognizing these patterns in ourselves or others can be crucial in preventing conflicts from escalating. On the tell-all stage, the repetition of grievances made each reaction more charged, proving that unresolved issues compound over time. Even beyond romantic relationships, the dynamics offer lessons for broader human interactions. Respecting autonomy, balancing vulnerability with boundaries, and understanding that jealousy often signals insecurity rather than malice are takeaways that apply to friendships, family relationships, and workplace dynamics. Watching Matt, Jasmine, and Gino navigate their emotional entanglements provides a magnified example of how behavior patterns, if left unchecked, can drive chaos. Finally, reflecting on the psychological underpinnings helps contextualize the drama in a fair and empathetic way. Each choice, reaction, and confrontation wasn't random, it stemmed from real human needs: love, security, respect, and control. Recognizing this allows viewers to critique behavior without reducing individuals to caricatures. It also highlights that accountability and self-awareness are key in navigating complicated emotional landscapes. Even if you're not in their shoes, this teaches a tough lesson about boundaries. As the tell-all wraps, it's clear that Matt, Jasmine, and Gino's stories are far from over. The emotional chaos, lingering doubts, and unresolved tension haven't just dissipated, they've intensified. Matt's tearful questioning of Matilda's paternity revealed more than fear. It showed how fragile trust can be when layered with jealousy, ultimatums, and external pressure. Jasmine's cautious responses highlighted her desire for autonomy, balanced against her complicated feelings for both men. Gino's presence reminded everyone that past attachments don't fade on command, and that unresolved emotions have a way of inserting themselves into the present, no matter how hard we try to move forward. The tell-all wasn't just about confrontation, it was about exposing behavior patterns that drive conflict. Ultimatums, lingering doubts, and external expectations collided with personal histories and emotional vulnerability, creating a pressure cooker that had everyone on edge. Matt's struggle to balance his love for Jasmine with his mother's expectations mirrored a universal challenge: how to reconcile personal desire with social and familial pressures. Jasmine's navigation of independence, past heartbreak, and present obligations showed the difficulty of asserting agency in emotionally complex environments. Gino's back-and-forth involvement illuminated the challenges of closure, forgiveness, and letting go, showing that past relationships can ripple through present ones in unexpected ways. Fans and social media watchers have been dissecting every moment, weighing loyalty against self-preservation and debating who was in the right. While some empathize with Matt's vulnerability, others admire Jasmine's caution, and yet others see Gino as the lingering variable nobody can ignore. These reactions underscore the universality of the drama. Viewers can see reflections of their own emotional conflicts, decisions, and regrets, which is why engagement remains so high. The lessons from the tell-all are layered and significant. Boundaries matter, and failing to set or respect them can escalate even minor doubts into full-blown confrontations. Communication is essential, but it must be paired with honesty and emotional awareness. Trust is not just about fidelity, it's about understanding intentions, past patterns, and the pressures influencing behavior. The love triangle, family interference, and ultimatums all serve as magnified examples of what happens when these elements are misaligned. Yet the story doesn't end here. There are questions still unanswered. Will Matt come to terms with his feelings and fears? Can Jasmine assert her independence while navigating her obligations and past connections? Will Gino finally let go? Or will his involvement continue to stir the pot? These unresolved threads guarantee that the drama isn't finished. It's only evolving. Every choice, reaction, and confession in this tell-all sets the stage for the next wave of tension, heartbreak, and revelation. The emotional stakes remain high because the characters are at critical crossroads. Decisions made in the aftermath of the tell-all will determine not just relationships, but trust, security, and personal growth. Matt has to reconcile his fears with reality. Jasmine must balance caution with honesty and emotional risk. Gino has to decide whether closure is possible or if lingering feelings will continue to complicate matters. Each of these arcs intersects, creating a web of conflict, anticipation, and drama that fans are eager to see unfold. What makes this story compelling is how relatable it is beneath the chaos. Most viewers have experienced jealousy, miscommunication, or pressure from family and friends in their own relationships. Seeing these dynamics amplified on screen offers both entertainment and insight, allowing audiences to reflect on their own boundaries and decision-making processes. The high drama of the tell-all becomes a mirror for real-life emotional struggles, which is why the conversations online remain so heated and personal. Even as the tell-all ends, the suspense remains. Small gestures, fleeting expressions, and unspoken thoughts hint at what's to come. The cracks in trust, unresolved jealousy, and subtle manipulations suggest that the next chapter will be even more intense. Nothing has been fully resolved. Every conversation, decision, and confession has planted seeds that will likely bear fruit in unexpected ways. Next episode, boundaries are tested again, and someone finally reaches their breaking point. The fallout promises to be explosive, emotionally raw, and impossible to ignore. Every fan, every viewer will be holding their breath to see who steps up, who breaks down, and who manages to navigate the storm without losing themselves. You won't want to miss the fallout in the next season.